After another lackluster performance, many people are pointing fingers at what is going wrong offensively, and many have come to the conclusion that it's Greg Roman, and unfortunately, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, the Chargers offense has been largely inconsistent and has really just disappeared at large portions of each game this season. And I'm sure fans are out there thinking, man, it's time to get rid of Greg Roman already. But unfortunately, I'm here to tell you that is not going to happen anytime soon. Also, Kristian Fulton started the year, was fantastic, was a true lockdown corner, and he has regressed something fierce the last 6 games. One of the positive things, though, Quentin Johnston seems like he has turned a page, and he absolutely is running angry.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's played up to his size, especially at least with the ball in his hands over the last couple games, and I think there is something definitely to it. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And David, we've talked about Greg Roman, ad nauseum. I mean, this is a guy that we didn't necessarily want from the get-go. We understood why a Jim Harbaugh type of coach would go get a Greg Roman, especially with their familiarity with each other. At the same time, with how bad this offense has been, or just at least the lack of consistencies that this offense has had, and just being shut out in so many halves in games so far this season, I understand why people really are up in arms at this point. Like, okay, like this Greg Roman thing isn't working out, and Athir is definitely one of them.
Daniel, David, this is Athir. I love you, my boys. Buy or sell Tuesday. Despite the loss, despite all the problems on offense, Greg Roman will stay another year because Coach Harbaugh would not change a new offense for Herbie and give him more weapons. I'm buying it. What do you think? Thank you. Love you.
I think it's a pretty unfortunate buy for me, David.
It is for me as well, Daniel. I mean, I think obviously we put out a show when Greg Roman first got hired, the infamous Greg Noman. But
infamous is a good way to describe it, considering the response to it. People were not happy with us questioning the mighty Jim Harbaugh, of course.
They were not, and obviously, hey, everybody was, spirits were all very, very high, and so were ours, right? I mean, but right now you're looking at the stats, and it is pretty bleak. I mean, 22nd in rushing yards per game, 25th in passing yards per game, 21st in points per game, 27th in total yards. So it's just not a lot of places where you can look and say that there's a lot of redeeming qualities about this offense that the Chargers have run this year. Now, with that being said, I have to agree with Athir. I don't think that Greg Roman is going anywhere this year. And yeah, hey, there's some limited resources to work with. I mean, they thought that they were going to be able to make it work with the guys that they have. As me and you discussed before the show,
there's personnel issues for sure. It is hard to parse how much of it is what he doesn't have and how much of it is the scheming. The one thing, if you're going back and watching some of these games, is the scheme isn't perfect and it does feel outdated. And there are some hugely, hugely questionable calls and big time moments where you're like, why is that dude running that route?
Yeah.
Why are, and I just think that the problem with Greg Roman is trying to parse how much of it is this, how much of it is that. But I don't think one thing is really up for that much of a debate. And that is just if he's going to be back in 2025, because for me, I'm going to go back to Jim Harbaugh's words that he said himself. And he said, like Moses, I'm going to die leaning on my staff.
Yeah.
And I just think that, although you have seen him, fire offense coordinators at Michigan in the past, this is someone he has a deep relationship with, and that shouldn't be the main cause. But there are a lot of personnel problems, that you could point to and say, hey, I don't have enough to work with here because of the limited resources. Per Daniel Popper, the Bucs blitzed the Chargers at the highest, or the second highest rate of Justin Herbert's career. Greg Roman had no answer for it, right?
None.
Over their last 3 games, the Chargers are 28th in third down percentage. They're 29th in fourth quarter scoring for the entire season. They're 28th in second half scoring. I thought this was a pretty telling quote here from Kurt Warner, who put on Twitter, "I know they've had some good success this year with Justin Herbert, who's played some really good football, but the Chargers pass offense is a struggle for me to watch and makes it really hard on the quarterback, in my opinion. It leaves me asking why so often." And I think the why is what, the question that a lot of Chargers fans are asking themselves, because nothing ever feels easy for this offense.
Yeah, they have very few drives. And I mean, hey, a couple of opening drive game scripts that have looked really, really good. They've been able to hit that hot knife through butter and move all the way down the field and score touchdowns. But man, that's really been few and far between. And it just seems like, why are those game scripts so good, so creative, and then you're not able to make the adjustments and be able to put your guys in good positions and also adjust your game plan to kind of fit your injured quarterback? Like, how about we try to get the ball out of his hands a little bit quicker? Like, let's try to protect him. Let's not get him hit 15 times a game. Like, there's just certain things in there within all of the stats that we just put out there that, feel like they just need to do a better job of utilizing the talent that they have, and they just haven't done so up to this point.
No, I mean, they've had the second fewest first downs in the NFL so far this year. The only team worse than them is the Patriots with a rookie quarterback. Like, there's just
ridiculous.
No excuse. You have to be able to work with what you have better than that. I think that's where this one comes from. Paul Koo, who says, buy or sell. Greg Roman will be able to design a game plan and blocking schemes to maximize the strengths and cover the weaknesses of this current roster. I don't think he can, and I'm buying that, David, because I think that's exactly what we're seeing right now.
Yeah. There's just no way. I mean, we're 14 games into the season. Like, what Greg Roman has shown us is what he is, who he is, and what his offense is.
And he's not a spring chicken.
Yeah, no, he's not. Right? He's been in this game a very, very long time, 20 plus years. He said he took time off to try to innovate his offense. We haven't seen those innovations bear fruit yet. But like I was saying, it's 6 games over 100 yards rushing in 14 games, and 5 games under 75 yards rushing. And like, that's supposed to be his calling card is, hey, I'm going to create a great rushing attack. I'm going to take pressure off the quarterback. That has not happened at all.
It hasn't. And he's consistently shown us that he can't work around or maximize the strengths of this roster that we know has some good players, right? Like Justin Herbert, good player. Tackle's good. Ladd McConkey, you have usable players. Like Josh Palmer can be used. Like Quentin Johnston, we're seeing if he's put in the right situations, he can be a dangerous weapon too.
Yeah.
But there's just kind of total futility there as far as finding that rhythm, finding an offense that feels like it's easy for the players to play inside of, and that actually is just helping maximize what you do have instead of kind of just putting a spotlight on the deficiencies that this offense absolutely does have. Personnel is a problem. But Greg Roman, wherever he's been, it hasn't ended well for him, and I think for some reason. This can be a better offense with better personnel, for sure. Obviously, if the Chargers are more talented, the offense would look better. They have a talent deficiency on offense, for sure. I don't think there's a single skill group or just straight-up position group outside of quarterback and tackle the Chargers are above average at right now.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're hoping you have a great coaching staff and an all-star coaching staff like we were promised to be able to elevate the guys they do have. And it doesn't feel like some of these guys are getting elevated at all. And I think that's a big part of the problem. And I just think the ceiling is always only ever going to be so high if you have Greg Roman as the offensive coordinator doing things the way that for the most part he's always done it. But let's do this one quickly, David, because I don't think this one is going to take very long from where you at, Cap. He says, buy or sell. Will the Chargers leave the conservative play on 4th down behind, or we continue not to trust the offense and what could be game-changing moments? What do you think?
Unfortunately, this just is who Jim Harbaugh is. He's a very conservative football coach. The Chargers have only gone for it 12 times on 4th down this season. Just for context, they went for it 32 times last season under, of course, Mr. Go For It all the time, Brandon Staley.
Yeah, and like the hard thing with like 4th down attempts is because the Chargers, even of those 12s, like how many of those were just because of desperation because they absolutely have to. Like when you're down 14 points in the 4th quarter, you don't get credit for going for it on 4th down, right?
You have
like,
to go, right?
Yeah,
go.
It's in the first half when you're up 17-10, deciding to trade 20 yards of field position instead of giving your offense a chance, which we know has issues, right? But at that point, Justin Herbert was moving around a little better. They had something rolling. They had some rhythm. And as soon as they didn't go for it, it felt like all that rhythm totally went out the window. And I mean, 3 times punting in plus territory over 2 games. it just feels like that's kind of who Jim Harbaugh is. And Greg Roman said it, like he's going with his gut. He's trusting his defense, which against, the bad teams has worked out for them. But I think, and for me, I would like it leaning a little bit more analytically, like, hey, let's either try the field goal or let's give Justin Herbert a crack at this, because his empty possession isn't going to do anything for us at all. But we do have more to get into, especially on the defensive side, where things are going a little bit sour, and Jesse Minter's not taking as much heat, but there's definitely some players who have been a liability over the last couple of games. So we're going to talk about maybe if Kristian Fulton has regressed and what the Chargers do with Cam Hart now that he's had his second concussion in his rookie season, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, because Game Time is the only place to get your tickets, not only to sports, but music, theater, comedy, whatever you're looking for. Game Time is the best place to go for your tickets, because Game Time now has a feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you're in Los Angeles and you guys want to go see the last home game of the season for the Chargers on Thursday Night Football against the Broncos, you can get great seats on Game Time. And right now I saw tickets for only $58 to get into this primetime matchup in a huge AFC West divisional clash. And you might think, oh, well, what if I find it cheaper somewhere else? Well, I will tell you that you also get the Game Time guarantee with Game Time, meaning if you find tickets in the same section in a row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. I also need to tell you guys about FanDuel, because you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I'm interested to see where this line goes, David, because the Chargers are currently 3-point favorites at home on Thursday Night Football, and God, do I hope that they are right. But the great thing about FanDuel is that you don't have to pick the Chargers to win by 3 points, because there's so many different ways to bet. Alternate spreads, alternate point totals, even who will score first, if there'll be overtime or not. Whatever you're looking to bet on, you can find it with FanDuel. And you also get the live in-game betting, so you can get a feel for the game before you decide to put your money down on whatever you want. And all you have to do is just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. David, let's get into the defensive side of things, because I know also me and you were talking before the show, like, hey, yeah, Greg Roman been consistently bad. He kind of has earned whatever criticisms that he's getting right now. Jesse Minter might be sliding by a little bit more, at least as far as what the buy or sells were for the fans today. And it got us thinking about what the biggest overreactions and storylines on defense are, including Kristian Fulton, who at the beginning of the year was a prized acquisition. And now maybe things are slipping a little bit. So the buy or sell here today is this, David. Buy or sell, Kristian Fulton is regressing.
Yeah, coming off of his worst game where he gave up 6 receptions on 6 targets for 88 yards and a touchdown, I have to buy it because the numbers, they support it, and pretty loudly. The first 7 games of the season, he was absolutely locked down. I mean, it was crazy. 8 receptions on 15 targets for only 76 yards and 1 touchdown. The last 6 games, 21 receptions on 32 targets, 275 yards, and 3 touchdowns allowed. And it just seems like they weren't targeting him much in the beginning of the year. They are definitely targeting him now, and they're finding a lot of success when they do.
Yeah, if you wanted to make an argument for him, right, he only allowed 6 yards against Kansas City. That was only 1 game ago, so you don't have to go too far back. But in that game, he also had a bad pass interference. And that is the one thing you didn't mention, was just the penalties. Yeah, 6 for 6, 88 yards, 158.3 passer rating allowed in that last game, which
that's perfect.
Doesn't go any higher than that. Is obviously bad. But yeah, I mean, 66 yards against the Falcons and a 75% completion percentage, lowest graded coverage defender versus the Ravens. And it feels like he kind of went from a top priority to be re-signed after the season. And it feels like that has dropped precipitously over the last few games. You still see him in position to make some of these plays, but the plays aren't getting made, and the penalties are adding on top of what has already been kind of an up and down player over the last, really since he came back from his injury. But that's not the only concern the Chargers have in their cornerback room, because Cam Hart suffered his second concussion of the season on Sunday. And man, it's really tough to know what to do in these situations, especially with head injuries. But the buy or sell is this, David. Simply buy or sell. The Chargers should shut Cam Hart down for the season.
Yeah, I mean, this one sucks. I mean, this is a really, really hard buy or sell to talk about because of, honestly, how great he has been. And I think for Cam Hart, one of the biggest things that we saw about Cam Hart's game before, the Chargers drafted him even, and afterwards was that Cam Hart is usually in the right place, is very sticky coverage, but he wasn't the most physical type of corner. That has completely changed in the NFL, where he has utilized his strength and his size to great effectiveness. And he's really, caused several pass breakups because he's just been knocking dudes loose. And it's been great. It's been great to watch. But we're sitting here, and this is his second concussion in the span of the last month and a half. Yeah. So it's just one of those things where football is great, but football is a game. And you're in your 20s, you're so young, you have your entire life in front of you, so you seriously have to consider your well-being and your health going forward. And that's why I have to think that the Chargers have to seriously consider, obviously with consultation with the doctors, maybe shutting Cam Hart down.
So you're buying it then?
I'm going to buy it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I don't want to.
It is a gray area, right? Because it's like, it's really tough because you don't know how hard it's hitting him. You don't know what the symptoms are. I think the hard thing also is that with the first concussion, it's unclear whether he would have come back after a week because he had also injured his ankle. Yeah. So, I mean, that was something that we ended up missing a couple weeks. How much of that was him in the concussion protocol? We don't know. We don't know when he's going to get out of the concussion protocol. The Chargers could just say, hey, we're not going to risk it. We're just going to put him on injured reserve right now. We're going to just make sure we take our time with it. And I do think you have to be cautious and you have to take some extra time. You definitely don't want him getting 3 in a season, right? We saw what 2 did to Asante Samuel Jr. as a rookie in the same season. We saw what 2 did to Joey Bosa when he suffered 2 in the 2020 season.
And Joey was very candid about what the concussions did to him.
And they shut him down the last couple games of the season. But yeah, it was eye-opening to hear, Joey Bosa talk about that. And those are all the things you don't know. You don't know how it's impacting him. You don't know if he's sitting in his room in a dark room for 72 hours straight. You just don't know any of that. And he has shown so much potential that it does seem kind of messed up in a way because it's like if he wasn't playing as good, maybe you would have a different answer and not want to rush him back. But the fact of the matter is the Chargers need him, right?
Yeah,
so I think it all has to come down to just how he's reacting to it, how quickly he comes out of the protocol. If he has any kind of lingering side effects, I think you definitely shut him down. But with 3 games and a playoff berth potentially coming up, I don't necessarily think he will just go straight to IR. So
I don't think
we'll see how it plays out. I mean, you can't ensure that he's not going to get a third one if he goes out there, pretty much no matter what. If you put him back out there, you're risking it. How much are you willing to risk it? So I guess I would sell that they have to shut him down right now.
Yeah.
But I think that, if there's anything that's lingering and there's any chance that, he's showing signs that he'd be more susceptible to anything else going back in, I think you have to cut it down and shut it down right there. But let's get to this one from Adrian Whiteside because there's even more issues in the secondary. He says, buy or sell Jasir Taylor. I'm all for keeping him on special teams, but other than that, he's had a bad year in my opinion. I'd rather see Asante Samuel Jr. So, first of all, Asante Samuel Jr. is on injured reserve. In a perfect world, I would buy Jasir Taylor primarily playing, only playing on special teams. He's a good special teams player, obviously with a really dumb play in the last game. You can't get burnt for a touchdown and then go make a dumb fair catch interference penalty, which is just adding insult to injury.
Yeah.
At the same time, David, who do they have? Who is left out there, right? I don't know if they have any real choice right now but to play Jasir Taylor. Then again, he only ended up playing 6 snaps in that last game, and it definitely felt like he got benched, no matter if J.C. Minter saying or not saying that he did, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 18 receptions on 26 targets so far this year, 4 touchdowns allowed, 3 pass defenses. And I think there is a little bit of recency bias here, obviously, because it was a really bad touchdown that he gave up. Because if you think about it, really, over the last 4 games, looking at the stats, it's only 5 receptions allowed for 49 yards against
his snaps have been cut down a lot, though, with Derwin James playing a lot in the slot, though.
And they have been for sure. But I mean, the recency bias is always going to be the first thing on our minds. Oh man, get him out of here. He's horrible. Yeah. And I understand it, and there are certain plays that definitely indicate that, but I don't think that's the entire book of business for Jasir Taylor this year. And also, like you just said when we were talking about Cam Hart, the Chargers don't really have a choice. They have to put Jasir Taylor on the field.
Well, I think it's the big plays that he's allowed, right? Because it's not just that play. It's the play against the Bengals on 4th down, and T. Higgins gets loose with him as the closest defender to him, and it turns into a 40-plus yard touchdown. It's going back to the Titans game. Calvin Ridley, first drive of the game, gets loose for a 40-yard touchdown. You don't always know where those responsibilities lie. I think Jesse Minter tells you how he felt about how he started that last game by him playing 6 snaps in the game. But yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, like I think the only other option is putting Dean Leonard on the outside, putting Tarheeb Still in the slot, and putting Kristian Fulton on the other outside spot.
Yeah.
We just talked about the issues he's having. So not a lot of clear answers right now, but we know that secondary is going to have to bounce back in a big way. But if you're looking for a silver lining, David, especially from that last game, I think you found it with Quentin Johnston, at least in part of his game, because he is running angry, and that is kind of a new development we've seen from him over the last couple of days. So we're going to talk about that and maybe the potential return of J.K. Dobbins and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. It's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back, and with a newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then, the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Dave, let's get into some more buy or sell here because I know there are a lot of overreactions and storylines to talk about, especially after the first blowout loss in the Jim Harbaugh era. But thank you guys again for making us your first listen. We always appreciate you guys, especially after a 2-game losing streak, right? After a back-to-back losses, and you still come here to us to vent about it and be able to kind of talk things out as we see what this team can do for the rest of the season. But if you need a second listen, check out the new slate at Locked On NFL with Tyler, the Madman Rowan, and also my boy Tony Wiggins in the barbershop as they bring on the people who cover their teams every single day of the week. But David, let's get into this next buy or sell here, and it's a good one. Buy or sell, Quentin Johnston has played with a new mentality over the last several games.
I got to buy it, man, and I love it. And it's great to see with Quentin Johnston finally kind of playing up to his size a little bit more, right? Trying to run. And even last year in his rookie season, he was really, really difficult to bring down. Like it just seemed like it took 2, 3, 4 type of defenders to get him on the ground. And I just remember them having to whistle plays dead a lot without him actually getting put on the ground. And I think the last couple of games, we've seen more of that version of Quentin Johnston with the ball in his hands, running through people, running around people. I mean, you saw it on that touchdown, which was great, where he kind of spun off, broke through about 3 or 4 defenders and got in the end zone. But it's 10 catches on 16 targets for 93 yards, 2 touchdowns. 6 of those 10 catches have generated a first down.
You're talking about over the last couple games?
Yeah, over the last 2 games. Yeah, over the last 2 games, 6 of his 10 catches have generated a first down. 4 missed tackles forced, 4.4 yards after catch per reception the last 2 games, and also 0 drops over his last 3 games. So Quentin Johnston, I think we're seeing a much better version of him. The confidence is obviously a big thing. It's high right now when he's playing the way he's playing right now with the physical nature. That's the type of game where I feel like we're going to see the best version of Quentin out there on the field.
Yeah, playing up to his size with the ball in his hands, right? Because that's an important thing
that's
here.
The key.
And also just being able to catch the ball, making a couple catches away from his body over the last couple of games too. But yeah, I mean, the touchdown played against the defender's leverage, spun back inside, and then finished the play where it looked like he's looking for the contact there, but also just like feels like he's never giving up on any play and just say, okay, I'm good with a 6-yard gain here. It's like, this is a 6-yard gain that I can turn into a 13-yard gain. And that's huge because I truly think that when he has the ball in his hands and he's looking like he has the last couple games, he's one of the better after the catch guys in the league. And I think that 4.4 yards after the catch per catch number is a little damper down a couple of like diving catches in the last game where you're getting 0 yards after the catch on those. Some bad ball placement in some instances from Justin Herbert after he was super beat up in that last game too, where he couldn't do much after the catch. But it does show you, hey, lean into this more. Like you have Alain McConkey, you have Quentin Johnston, who is good with the ball in his hands. You have to be leaning into that more because, unfortunately, he hasn't been as good on the deep ball still. You haven't seen those improvements there. And
Yeah, he's
being able
horrible
to play
in the contested catch situations. You just got to stop.
and that part, yeah, but like know who your people are. You
Yeah.
have DJ Chark. Give him some of those opportunities if you have to. You can rotate these guys in and out.
Use him deep. Why are we
Yeah.
using these like small short routes for DJ Chark? I just don't get it. It's
Why are we waiting on
annoying.
4th and 9 to throw up DJ Chark a 3-yard slant?
3-yard
pass?
slant.
Yeah,
It's
no, I
ridiculous.
mean it's so crazy. But I think with Quentin Johnston, there are certain parts of his game you stay away from still, but there is big development there. You love the temperament that he's playing with, and that is a dangerous weapon right now when he's in the open field. It seems like he's always maximizing what he's doing.
Yeah, he's
and
getting
now
extra yards.
He
every
has a
time.
sprained ankle, and we might not even see him this week against the Broncos, which when he is playing like this, feels like a bigger loss than maybe it did 3 weeks ago, but right now it definitely is. But let's get to this one, talking about the Chargers' weapons or lack thereof. Just Me says, buy or sell if J.K. Dobbins returns by the Patriots week. We'll be good moving forward. If not, we're screwed. And I think there's a lot of people that kind of have that kind of, sentiment right now. Like, feels like they're screwed in a lot of ways. David, are you buying or selling that because J.K. Dobbins could potentially be back then?
Yeah, I am going to buy it because, like, without J.K. Dobbins, there's just no explosion at all in that Chargers backfield. And really, it's this. He has 24 10-plus yard runs this season. You want to know how many Gus Edwards and Kamani Vidal have? 6 total the entire season.
Yeah.
So that means he has 4 times as many explosive runs as both of the other running backs that have been getting a lot of carries combined.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. And hey, the last 3 games without J.K. Dobbins, it's 56, 94, and 32 yards rushing. There just really isn't much threat there. There's not a lot of consistency there. With J.K. Dobbins, at least, when he gets the ball, that there's a good chance, not even a chance, but there's a decent chance that he can break one and he can take it 30, 40 yards. Oh, by the way, he's scored 8 touchdowns this year and is averaging 4.8 yards per carry. So when J.K. Dobbins is on the field, when he's healthy, he is a major part of the Chargers offense, and they are definitely missing him because of that explosive nature that he brings to the table.
I absolutely think they're missing him. I think I would sell that he's the savior for this offense because we were talking about some scoreless halves before J.K. Dobbins got hurt and went to IR. But to kind of, illustrate your point even further, over the last 3 games, you heard about how many 10-plus yard carries that J.K. Dobbins has this year. The Chargers have had 2 runs that have gone for more than 10 yards in 3 games. Like, there is no explosiveness. That doesn't mean, against the Patriots and the Raiders, you shouldn't win even if you don't have J.K. Dobbins, because you absolutely should. So I don't think they'll be screwed in that sense, but it's hard to imagine this offense having any sort of reawakening, any sort of renaissance or resurgence without someone who has been easily their best running back, especially in pass protection, because Kamani Vidal, 4 pressures and a sack given up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, as a rookie to go up against Todd Bowles, I'm not making any excuses for him. It's a tough place to be.
Yeah, that's a
but
tough
that
day
is
at
really
the office.
bad. I think he has the temperament and the physicality for it, but that's a lot different than trying to decide who's coming and deciphering who you are supposed to block. And in that last game, it hurt them badly. And that is somewhere where J.K. Dobbins has been really good and has really sprung several explosive plays down the field because of the blocks that he's been able to pick up. There was no blocks being picked up pretty much by anyone on Sunday. But let's get to this last one here from We Are the Storm, who says, one last thing we'll get to here. Buy or sell, the Chargers won't have to win another game, and they'll still make the playoffs. David, are you buying or selling that?
I'm selling it. Yeah, they absolutely have to win another game. I mean, you got to think about it. The other 2 teams that are in the hunt, right, which there are only 2, it's the Colts and it's the Dolphins, right? Right now, they both have a conference record of 5-5, which I think really, if we want to just make this simple, the Chargers win 2 games out of their last 3, and it's an absolute
it's their magic number
guarantee that they get to the playoffs. They have to. Like, that's what it costs. That's what it's going to take. I don't
Without
really
help,
care to entertain any other possible scenarios, because then it gets a lot more difficult and a lot more tricky. Don't put it in the hands of anybody else. Like, we've seen how that has gone bad for the Chargers in the past. You have the ability to control your own destiny, take care of your business, which means winning at least 2 of your last 3 remaining games, and you punch your ticket. That's it.
So, to your point, We Are the Storm. I mean, it could happen, right? You would just need a lot more help. Like, you have the Bengals and the Broncos playing each other. The Colts, if they won out, they already have 8 losses, right? You can get to 10 wins. That eliminates everyone else because the best they can get at this point as 6-8 teams are to 9-8. And that's not going to get it done with where the Chargers are at. You have 2 full game lead. If you win 2 more games, you're in. And also just like, God, how it would just feel so badly, right? To lose 5 games in a row, because that's what you're talking about there.
The playoffs,
losing 5 games in a row after being 8-4 to get into the playoffs would be pretty ridiculous.
Horrendous.
And you should just be banned from the playoffs if you're 8-9 and you have a losing record.
Exactly.
We've seen it before, but man, I can't think of anything that would be less exciting, going into a playoff run than that. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. Little programming note: this week's going to be a little bit different with Thursday Night Football, since Thursday is saved for crossover days. Tomorrow is going to be our Keys for Success, though, so we're going to switch things up a little bit. Tomorrow we'll get into our Keys for Success. We'll get you guys' bold predictions on the show. You can hit us up with those at Locked On LAC or call them in at 323-524-7924 for this upcoming game against the Broncos. But we will be getting our Keys for Success, and then Thursday on game day, we'll be releasing our Locked On Chargers, Locked On Broncos crossover show. But to make sure you guys never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media, not only on Twitter, but on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page as well. Hey, man, there's a lot the Chargers are going to have to do, and I think a lot that we're going to talk about tomorrow is, hey, are we going to see the Bo Nix that you forced them to be in the first 3 quarters of that game, or the one that almost came back and made it a little bit too close for comfort? Because that honestly is probably going to be what decides a gigantic Thursday night tilt in the AFC West. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for our Keys for Success show, how we tell you how the Chargers can get back in the win column. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.